Okay then, sorry about the delay, we're going to make a start now. My name's Basil, or you can call me Baz. I've been working in Dawah for 5 years and we've never started on time, so apologies for that. But basically I'm the chairman of a new organisation in Middlesbrough called Straight Path Islam. You can check our website out, www.straightpathislam.webs.com. We're a group of young brothers and sisters who want to dispel all misconceptions about Islam and bring the true ideas of Islam towards our non-Muslim friends in the area. And also we're going to create healthy dialogue between Muslims and non-Muslims so you can understand each other properly. If we don't get active and if we don't start speaking up for ourselves, the only source of information people can get about us is from the news and other places. So basically it's up to us to create an environment where we can have healthy dialogue with each other and discuss all topics, especially the sensitive topics. Because if we avoid them, then like I said, the only other place that people can go to learn about Islam is from the media or maybe people that don't like Islam or whatever. Today's topic is, does God exist? To a lot of people this might sound like a simple thing, just yes or no, but more and more people, especially from the young people, are beginning to think about, does God exist, does God not exist? A lot of people are agnostic, meaning they say there might be a God, there might not be a God, but even if there is anyway, he's got nothing to do with us, we're not bothered. Some people are spiritual but don't follow organised religion. Other people are certain that there's a God, and other people just disbelieve in him altogether. So this is a very important question, and we aim to tackle it today. The format of the debate is that we're going to have Brother Hamza Tzortzis, who's sat closest to me. He's going to be arguing for the existence of God. And we have over there Mr. Philip Nathan, who is from the North East Humanist Society. And he's going to be arguing that there is no existence of God. Since Brother Hamza is making the affirmative argument, he will be going first. We'll have 25 minutes to give his argument, after which Mr. Philip Nathan will have the same amount of time, another 25 minutes, to give his side of the argument. After that, they will have 8 minutes each for a rebuttal to argue against the other person's argument, in other words. And we're making sure everyone sticks to the time to the second, and we'll make this 100% fair. And just to let you know about the two speakers, neither of these two guys, I'm sure they might not want to say this, but neither of these two guys are getting any personal benefit out of this whatsoever. Both agreed to do it for free. So they're both here for one reason and one reason only. Both believe that what they have is the truth, and they've come here to share that with you, the people of the audience. So they've come here in good spirits. So I hope that the people in the audience can also help to make this debate a constructive debate, so that we can hear each other's arguments with respect. It's only due to the nature of the debate that people might say certain things which might sound offensive to other people, right? But, as people, we have to be able to accept opinions, even if they're against our opinions, okay? So I hope that we can continue with respect. After the debating bit is over, we'll have a 10-minute break where I'll make more announcements, and we'll have, after that, a chance for question and answers. I'll go through the details for question and answers later on. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Hamza Tzortzis to come to the stand and to deliver his 25-minute speech. Thank you. And please stay silent throughout the full debate. You can have question and answers at the end. If you want to, do an applause or whatever, or do a takbir or whatever, do it after they've stopped talking, because we're recording it.
Are the speakers working? Because the mic doesn't seem very good.
I've got a natural microphone in my voice.
Okay, just take your time.
إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. I greet you all with the Islamic greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the brothers and the sisters and the friends who have organized today's discussion. Most importantly, I'd like to thank Philip Nathan for being a positive participant in today's discussion. I think today's discussion is very important because the concept of God forms the foundation for religious belief. And therefore it forms the foundation for action, whether we perceive it to be bad or whether we perceive it to be good. But I think there's a theological, emotional reason why I'm here today as well. Because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, said, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه, which is a hadith, a narration attribute to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he said, you are not a true believer unless you love for others what you love for yourself. Akhihi means brother, but if you go to the other riwayah, the other narrations in Imam Ahmed, for example, it means the whole of humanity. Philip Nathan and other people in the audience who are of agnostic, skeptical or atheist perspective, they need to be given some of this thing that we love. And the thing that we love the most is the truth, is the idea that God does really exist. And it's very important because there's many so-called intellectuals out there in British society and across the world claiming that there is no God. For example, Richard Dawkins, he said, if people think God is interesting, the onus is on them to show that there is anything there to talk about. Otherwise, they should just shut up about it. This is the kind of mentality that we're having to face in the 21st century in Britain. Similarly, and nicely put, the Christian professor Alistair McGrath at the University of Oxford, he demystifies why some people are very aggressive atheists. And he says, if atheism saw itself simply as one irreligious option among many, there would not have been a problem. Atheism, however, has a disturbing tendency to see itself as the only faith and demands that everyone conforms to its beliefs. Now, I believe this debate today is not alien to the Islamic tradition. The Quran, which is the book of the Muslims, that we believe is divine, is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, engages with the mind. Allah says in the Quran, أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, do they not reflect within themselves? وَكَذَلِكَ نُفَصِّلُ الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And thus, we have explained our signs, our proofs, our evidences in detail for those who يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. يَتَفَكَّرُونَ in the classical Arabic language doesn't mean just thinking about something. It's very deep. It means the thing that you're reflecting upon, you must inquire about its implication. What does it really mean? Similarly, the Quran says, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Have you not seen the camel and how we created it? Always making us ponder and engaging our minds. The Quran is not a book of blind faith, rather it's a book of the thinking man, the thinking human being. Similarly, that's why I'm going to bring 3 arguments today very briefly, and we could expand them in the question and answers on why I believe there's greater reasons to believe that God does really exist. The first argument is God makes sense of the origin of the universe. The second argument is God makes sense of the fine-tuning of the universe to permit life. Third argument is God makes sense of objective moral values in the world. What we believe to be good and right is actually objective and not subjective. Let me start with the first argument. God makes sense of the origin of the universe. We have all asked, where have we come from? Why does something exist rather than nothing? Did the universe have a beginning? Did it just appear? Typically, atheists generally have said the opposite. They say the universe is eternal and uncaused. The famous philosopher Bertrand Russell, he said, the universe is just there and that's all. But I would argue this is irrational. This is not based upon thinking mind or any type of logic or rationality. Because if the universe was infinite forever, that would mean our past, our history is also infinite and forever. But can we have an infinite set of past events? No, we can't, because it leads to contradictions. For example, even mathematicians recognize this. Let me give you an example. You have these 2 lines here. You can see point A and B, D and C, and you can see they're finite lines. But if we stretch the 2 black lines onto infinity, forever, then I ask you, what is the distance between these 2 points? Now one may argue, well, the distance is infinity because it's between 2 infinites. The 2 lines have been stretched to infinity now. But you can also argue that the distance between those 2 points is finite because it's between 2 points. So there's a contradiction. It leads to absurdities. As the famous philosophers say, the concept of the infinity has no export into the real world. aptly put, the famous German mathematician David Hilbert, he said, "The infinite is nowhere to be found in reality. It neither exists in nature nor provides a legitimate basis for rational thought. The role that remains for the infinite to play is solely that of an idea." But historical events or past events are real things, not just ideas. So we can't have an infinite set of past events. We wouldn't have today. Therefore, we need a cause. Let me explain this with a nice example. Say you wanted to borrow the book called the Quran in Teesside University Library, and you had 4 people in front of you. You would have to wait 4 people long. If you had 400 people in front of you, you have to wait 400 people long. Now what if you had an infinite amount of people in front of you, or a forever amount of people in front of you? You would never get the Quran. Similarly, we can't have an infinite set of past events. The philosopher Alexander Vilenkin, he puts this really nicely, and he takes his gloves off. He doesn't hold any punches. He says, "It is said that an argument is what convinces the reasonable man, and a proof is what convinces even an unreasonable man. With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning." Now I would argue this is supported by scientific evidence, astrophysical evidence. It's not just a philosophical discussion. We've all heard of the Big Bang, where it was claimed that physical time and space were created, and matter and energy were also created. The 4 prominent scientists, J. Richard, James Gunn, David Schramm, and Beatrice Tinley, describe the event of the Big Bang as follows. And they say, "The universe began from a state of infinite density," this is the key word, infinite density, about 1 Hubble time ago. Space and time were created in that event, and so was all matter in the universe. But what does infinite density actually mean in scientific discourse? It actually means nothing. So, we have to believe that the universe came out of nothing. Similarly, Cambridge astronomer Fred Hoyle, he states, "The universe, at a point in the past, was shrunk down to nothing at all." So the Big Bang model requires us to believe that something was created out of nothing. For example, Anthony Kenny, professor at Oxford University, he says, "A proponent of the Big Bang theory, at least if he's an atheist, must believe that the universe came out of nothing and by nothing. But brothers, sisters and friends, out of nothing, nothing comes." Even atheists recognize this. The famous philosopher David Hume, he said, "I never asserted to absurd proposition as that anything might arise without a cause." Similarly, Pagey Zwart, in his publication About Time, says, "If there is anything we find inconceivable, it is that something could arise from nothing." And the famous eminent physicist, Sir Arthur Eddington, quite interesting statement here. He says, "The beginning of the universe seems to present insuperable difficulties unless we agree to look at it as frankly supernatural." So there is a cause for the universe based on philosophical, scientific, logical and rational evidence. But what is the nature of this cause? Because some atheists still claim, fine, there is a cause for the universe, but it's mechanical. There's no being, it's just mechanical. But I would argue that this cause must be personal. Because if it was mechanical, then the cause could not exist without the effect. And if we're saying this cause caused time in the whole universe, the cause must be eternal. But if it was mechanical, then the universe must also be eternal. The cause can't exist without effect. But in this case, we know the effect, the universe, is finite, had a beginning. So it means an eternal entity chose the universe to come into existence. And choice indicates personality. So it must be a personal being. Also, this being is not subject to time, because we know it created time. For example, Stephen Hawking, he says, almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Also, this cause must be uncaused, because if we say then what caused the cause, then we can argue what caused the cause that caused the cause, what caused the cause that caused the cause that caused the cause, and we're going again for infinity. But we've already discussed that infinity regress, going back to infinity, just simply doesn't exist. So there must have been a point where there was a sole cause. So, The summary of this first argument is as follows. It's a very basic summary for everyone to understand. 1. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2. The universe began to exist, as we've just substantiated. 3. Therefore, the universe has a cause. The second argument is that God makes sense, the existence of God makes sense of the fine-tuning of the universe for intelligent life. Because if we look at the Big Bang, and the initial conditions for the Big Bang were exquisitely arranged to permit a life-permitting universe. For example, Professor of Theoretical Physics, Paul Davies, he states, the explosive vigor of the universe is thus matched with almost unbelievable accuracy to its gravitating power. The Big Bang was not evidently any old bang, but an explosion of exquisitely arranged magnitude. Now, when the laws of nature are expressed mathematically, various constants are discovered, and these constants are not dependent on the laws of nature. For example, let me give you 2 examples. The expansion rate of the universe. Now, the expansion rate of the universe, if it differed by more than 10 to the power of minus 18, which is 1/quillionth of a second, there would have been no universe at all. For example, even Stephen Hawking, in his publication, A Brief History of Time, he acknowledges the following. He says, if the rate of expansion was 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million, the universe would have recollapsed before it ever reached its present size. The second example is about the Big Bang's low entropy condition. Roger Penrose of the Oxford University has calculated the odds, the chance, of the Big Bang's low entropy condition existing just by chance alone. And he said it's 10 to the power of 10, which is 10 and add 123 zeros. And Penrose comments. He says, I cannot even recall seeing anything else in physics whose accuracy is known to approach even remotely a figure like 1 in the 10 to the power of 10. So there are 3 possible explanations for this fine-tuning of the universe to permit intelligent life. Only 3 possible explanations. 1, physical necessity. 2, just by chance. Or 3, supernatural design. Well, it can't be physical necessity because we just discussed that these constants, these numbers, are not dependent on physical law. So it's not physical necessity. 2, it can't be chance because the numbers are so high that if you were able to say, yes, it was chance, that is equivalent of me saying that there's a possibility that my grandmother is a pink elephant that was born on Pluto that flew here on a giant feather. Because if you start believing in these astronomical figures, then there's no positive discussion. Then we could say, what if this and what if that? What if we're not really here? What if the world is actually flat, but someone made you believe it's round? These ifs, it doesn't create any positive discussion and we're going nowhere. So it can't be chance, because in day-to-day life, when the scientist or the atheist deals with his life, he doesn't entertain such chance. But when it comes to God, chance is possible. So the third argument is the most suffice argument for this, which is it must have been a supernatural designer. So the summary of this second argument. 1, the fine-tuning of the universe is due to physical necessity, chance, or design. 2, it can't be due to physical necessity, and it can't be due to chance. Therefore, 3, it is due to supernatural design. My final argument is that God makes sense of objective moral values in the world. The argument is as follows. If God does not exist, then objective moral values do not exist. But we believe that values are objective. We know that rape is objectively wrong. We know that murder is objectively wrong. We know the Holocaust was objectively wrong. But if you don't believe in a God, conceptually, you cannot say it was objective, only subjective. This doesn't mean atheists or humanists, they don't have good morals and they can't live a good life. And of course they can. But from an ideas point of view, you can never claim that rape is bad objectively. And you can never claim that the Holocaust was objectively wrong. And I'll give you the following examples. Before I do that, let's hit something from the late Professor J.L. Mackie of Oxford University, one of the most influential atheists. He says, actually he admitted, if there are objective values, they make the existence of God more probable than would have been without them. Thus, we have a defensible argument from morality to the existence of God. But I have to repeat, it doesn't mean atheists and humanists do not have moral behavior. But it means if you don't believe in a God, you can't claim that these morals are objective. You can't say rape is actually good or bad, objectively. You can say it's relatively good or bad. And this is a problem because all inside us, we believe these things are objectively wrong. So without God, there's only two ways to try and prove in objective morals. One is biology or evolution, and two is just social pressure, the influential ideas in society. But let's take the first one. Can we take evolution as a basis to prove that there is objective morals? No, we can't. Because what is evolution? Evolution says that human beings are just accidental byproducts of a lengthy evolutionary process. And our morals have evolved just like our ears or teeth. And similarly, you may argue, well, human beings are different from animals. No, not from a biological perspective, because evolution says that we're just like animals. And animals have no moral sphere. There's no moral paradigm when it comes to animals. Because when we see a cat plays with the mouse and scratches its eyes out and rips its brains out and eats it alive, we don't say the cat is behaving immorally. We just say he's acting according to his instincts. Similarly, evolution says exactly the same thing. For example, nicely put, the professor of science, Michael Rules, he explains, morality is a biological adaptation no less than our hands, feet and teeth. Considered as a rationally justifiable set of claims about an objective something, ethics, in other words morality, is illusionary. It's an illusion. I appreciate that when somebody says, love thy neighbor as thyself, they think they're referring above and beyond themselves. Nevertheless, such reference is truly without foundation. Morality is just an aid to survival and reproduction, and any deeper meaning is an illusion. This is what they believe in if you believe that morality comes from evolution. It has no objective basis. Secondly, can we claim social pressure? Can we claim, well, there's a consensus, an ijma' in Arabic, yeah? A consensus in society that says what's morally right or wrong. But there's huge problems in this. Because some of the actions that we do today in the 21st century will be despicable 40 or 30 years ago. Because the influential ideas in the society has shaped society in a different way. So, society is relative. Morals are relative from a social pressure point of view. They can never claim that objectively wrong or objectively right these actions. Similarly, if we believe that the basis of morality is just social pressure, then that means you would have to agree that the Holocaust was good if you believe in this approach. Because it was just social pressure. Because wasn't it social pressure in the 1930s and 40s that all the Germans came together to agree as a consensus that it was morally right to kill 6 million Jews? So we could never say that the basis of morality is just social pressure. So that's why I argue, if you don't believe in a God, you can never claim in objective morality. Because you have these two options, biology, evolution, or social pressure. And we just discussed, they cannot be a firm, rational foundation for objective morals. So Philip Nathan today can never claim that killing is actually objectively wrong, or objectively good. Because where is the basis? Where is the conceptual anchor that transcends human subjectivity? Only God can do that. So we could summarize the argument as follows. 1. If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. 2. We know objective moral values do exist. 3. Therefore, God exists. So I think in order for us to have a very positive discussion today, I think what Philip Nathan must do, in my opinion, I'm not telling him how to debate, is go away from emotions. I've had many debates with humanists and he always gets into a religious, emotional argument. I want it to be very nice and clinical so we get to understand the ideas behind if God exists or not the emotional ideas. So I think he has to address some of the arguments I've posed today. And let me just summarize all the arguments. The first argument of the beginning of the universe was, 1. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. 2. The universe began to exist. 3. Therefore the universe has a cause. The second argument was about fine-tuning, and it went as follows. 1. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to physical necessity, chance or design. 2. It is not due to physical necessity, chance or design. 3. Therefore it's due to supernatural design. And the last argument, the third argument about morality, went as follows. 1. if good does not exist, objective moral values do not exist either. 2, but we believe that rape and killing is objectively morally wrong. We believe in objective moral values. 3, therefore God does exist. These are the very basic premises I've used, and I think Philip Nathan needs to address them as best as he can. Anything that I've said that's wrong or offensive has come from my ego. Anything that I've said that's good and correct has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Unquestionably, indeed, all praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakallah khair for listening.
Right, that was the argument of Hamza. Now Philip Nathan will come on for 25 minutes max to give his side of the argument before we move on to rebuttals. So I'll call Philip Nathan to the stand, please. What was the pen? The plastic box.
Hello everyone.
Hi.
Thank you, Hamza. It was really interesting, erudite, and very complex, if I must say so, because I think I'm going to need some sort of greater explanation of some of the things you said. Forgive me if I sort of stick to my own agenda and what I plan to say rather than responding to the one that you kindly suggested that I should follow. Yes, I'm media officer of the North East Humanists. We're the largest local humanist organisation in the country outside of London. We're part of the British Humanist Association, and we're also affiliated with the International Humanist Ethical Movement. I have a feeling maybe there aren't many humanists in the room this evening. Okay. So let me just say a little bit about what humanism is about. Humanism is about living a good and a happy, fulfilling life without religion. Okay? It's about living a life based on reason. It's about living life, enjoying our lives, helping our communities, working together with other people. We believe in making, using evidence, making reasonable assumptions, what we feel are reasonable assumptions about life. And we believe in working together to support the happiness and well-being of all other people. I suppose, what does that mean in reality? It means that locally we support various charities, including working for refugees. We oppose racist organisations like the British National Party. We work in our communities and support organisations like Amnesty International. And we socialise, we enjoy ourselves together and have garden parties and things like that. We're concerned with the well-being and happiness of all humanity, but we believe this happiness, this well-being, can be achieved best by human effort alone. So humanists believe that we have one life. This is it. We're living it now. We don't see any evidence for life after death. We think this is it. We don't believe in reincarnation. We don't think there's any other worlds that we're going to visit after we die. This is it. We go into the ground. We have to live our life now and live it well now. We believe experience and reason provide the best way, the best approach to living a happy and successful life. So, humanists don't believe in any gods. We don't believe in supernatural explanations for our existence. As Hamza referred to, we don't follow any sacred books. Not the Quran, not the Bible, not the teachings of Buddha, not the writings of Ron Hubbard, or any others. We see humanism as being positive and constructive, supporting the welfare and well-being of all. We believe in a common humanity. People referred to here as brothers, but humanists would say that we're all brothers and sisters. We have a common humanity, that we share this, all people from all religions and no religion, that we have a common humanity, and that is the important thing. We believe in thinking based in reason, experience and evidence for the one life that we have. We see this as positive and constructive. So I suppose let me move to the motion. This House believes there is no God. I'd always prefer to be speaking a positive case for humanism, the kind of things we believe in, but humanists are associated with believing in no God, and that is actually correct. But I don't consider myself to be an atheist. What a sad life that would be, to spend your life thinking about what you don't believe in. As I say, we believe in a positive, moral approach to life, about doing good, about helping our communities. So I'm a humanist. But, as I say, we no doubt humanists don't believe any gods. We think there is no afterlife. There are no heavens, there are no hells. There are no rewards after death. There are no punishments after death. This is it. This is what we have. This is the one life we have. We see no angels. We see no supernaturally inspired miracles. We feel that there have never been any of these miracles, that they do not happen. This is the one life we have. We have to live a good life. Work for our fellow human beings now. We have to work every day to have a fulfilled, decent, caring, good life, enjoying ourselves, well, that's important, and supporting others, and doing it now. There are no rewards in any hereafter, as far as we are concerned. I suppose it comes down to how do we know anything exists? I suppose you could always say, do I exist here? I don't know. A lot of philosophical points raised. I suppose you'd say I exist, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay, good. We could say, for example, a book exists. I can see it, open it, touch it. I can cry because of it. I can laugh because of its contents. I could say a bacterium or a virus exists. I can see it through a microscope, electron microscope. I can see the effect of the disease. I can do tests which tell me which type of virus it is. We can develop antiviral drugs. We strongly believe that there's a new type of flu, and we're trying to develop a vaccine to combat that. Of course, I can't hold one in my hand and show it to you. But in other ways, through microscopy, through the evidence of what that virus actually does, we believe there is such a virus. And we can see that people have died from it. Love exists. We can feel love. We can see its consequences. We know we feel love. We can't see it, but it's there. What are people claiming when they claim there is a God? Well, I don't think they're just claiming that there's some supernatural, invisible being that exists. They are claiming that this entity exists. Have a seat somewhere. They're claiming that this entity exists and that it is actually all-powerful and that it influences and affects the real world of our lives, your life, the lives of others. I think that would be correct. That is what people are claiming. Not only that, people say that God is good. To show that such a God exists, get rid of this. These people must show that it can be experienced by the common senses. And they must be able to show that there are clear cause and effects relationships which involve this God, and that this God is good. Not only this, it must be accepted by the reason-based community, such a demonstration, not the majority of people, as showing that something is true requires demonstration, interpretation and reason. And I would say no such reason and experience-based demonstration has been presented. You see, I've never seen any God. I haven't seen the God of Islam. I haven't seen the Christian God. Maybe you'd say they're going to be the same thing, I don't know. I haven't seen any Hindu gods. I haven't seen the sun gods of Egypt, the Norse gods, the Greek gods, the Roman gods. I've never had any reason in my life to think that any of these gods are present and have taken action on anything. I wasn't going to show you a clip, I suppose, when I came here. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Got something here. Right. When the tsunami came and took the children from the beaches of India and Sri Lanka, where was this God? Where was this good God? Could not this all-powerful being come and have saved the children playing on the beach? What wrong thing had those children done in their life to deserve that? To be taken by a tsunami wave? When Nazi soldiers lined up Jewish men and women and children in front of ditches or led women and babies into gas chambers, could this God not have saved them, or looked after them, or done something? When Bosnian Serbs massacred young Muslim men and boys in Srebrenica, where was this God? I'm afraid the answer is nowhere. Because there is no God, there are no gods. If we want to sort these things out, we have to do it ourselves, in the one life we have. If we want to look after people, it's up to us to do it. The Soon Army, well, if people had invested some money and some technology to monitor the wave flows in the Indian Ocean, maybe 200,000 people wouldn't have died. But the action wasn't taken. But it could have been taken. But humans failed and didn't take the necessary action. I just want to come back to a point that Hamza did make. I don't think the German people did get together. You know, only 33% of Germans ever voted for the Nazis. You know, 2/3 of them didn't. There are a lot of good German people, and I'm sure you'd agree with that, Hamza. So, but I just wanted to point out the fact there's no racial coming together. Millions of people opposed the Nazis, and millions of Germans did, and they died and put in prison concentration camps themselves in their opposition. But there you go. The only way to get help, the only way to act to save people, to care for people, to look after them, is to do it yourself. To express love and care yourself, to take action yourself with others, to act within your community, society, to get things done. No God's going to help you ever, because there is no God there. What is presented as evidence comes from ancient books, the Quran, other texts from ancient Egypt, the Christian, the Jewish Bible, all of which present a range of counts. Of course, these books are said to have been written by gods or divinely inspired by gods. And so, of course, they say there is a God. But then we get into a circular argument. It goes round and round in circles. The book says there is a God, but the book was written by God. So you would never get out of that circle, frankly, if that is the evidence that's going to be taken. I would say, most importantly, these books are designed largely to get ordinary people to behave, but more importantly to do as they're told. I'm not going to give any quotes from the Quran because I don't think I know it well enough. It might be seen as being a bit rude. But I think Islam means submission. Is that fair to say? Yes, correct me if I'm wrong. I would say there's nothing to submit to. I would say don't submit to anybody. Not priests, professors, imams, gods, queens, sheikhs. Never submit. We must rule our own worlds. To whom is submission really being given anyway? Well, maybe I'll discuss that later on. Given that there are no gods, why do so many people apparently believe there is, or at least belong to and support groups which believe in gods and promote the idea that this entity exists? Well, let's start from the personal point of view. Why do people who believe in God believe in gods? Let's take a fairly obvious statement. Children who are born in Islamic countries, in Islamic societies, with Muslim parents, are very likely to end up as Muslims. I'm sure you'd agree with that, believing in God and the Prophet Muhammad. But if you're brought up in the UK, you're much more likely to end up belonging, for example, to the Church of England. I believe 24 million people claim allegiance to the Church of England. If you're brought up in a Buddhist society, then you're going to end up being Buddhist or Hindu. Not necessarily, but there's a very high likelihood that this is the way it's going to be. And in some countries, it's against the law to change your religion. So people are going to claim to belong to that religion anyway. And in many countries, in some countries, should I say, if you claim that you don't believe in God, well, you might as well sign your own death warrant. Because to go around the street saying there is no God is a criminal offence in many, not in that many countries, but there are sort of similar things. I believe in Greece, where I used to work many years ago, everybody is counted as being a member of the Greek Orthodox Church. And it's very difficult, because as a Greek, you must be a member of the Greek Orthodox Church. So it's very difficult. If you start feeling and thinking differently, you need to be a bit quiet about it. People say hundreds of years ago that certain important academics and intellectuals believed in God. They certainly mentioned God in their works. But if they didn't really have a choice. Because hundreds of years ago, if people didn't believe in God in the UK, they would be killed. Maybe it won't strike many chords with you, but in 1579, a man unknown today was burned to death because he said, and I think you'll agree with what he said, mate, the New Testament and the Gospel of Christ, now you won't agree with it entirely, is but mere foolishness. Matthew Hammout, 1579. A mere fable. Christ is not God or Saviour of the world, but a mere man, a shameful man, and an abominable idol, he said. Christ did not again rise from the dead or ascend into heaven. Baptism is not necessary, and nor the sacrament of the body and the blood of Christ. Of course, Catholics are supposed to believe in transubstantiation. It's a difficult word to say. Transubstantiation, that in the Catholic Mass the bread becomes the body of Christ and wine his blood, I believe. I don't believe, they believe. And it was a crime a couple hundred years ago in Britain to say, no, that's not true, it doesn't become the blood. You can't say that, because you'd be put in prison, you'd be killed for it. We live in a better world now. Humanists believe heavily in freedom. We certainly believe that if people wish to choose and practice a religion, that's their decision. Absolutely. And no bars should be put in their way, as long as these beliefs and practices do not damage the freedoms of others. We don't object to people letting children learn about other religions and belief systems. In fact, I was talking at Sunderland University a little while ago, and it was said there, aren't you trying to create a new orthodoxy? No, I think children have got to learn about religions. Children should be educated about Islam. They should be educated about Christianity, Buddhism, all beliefs. But I'd also like them to be educated about humanism and non-religious beliefs, which is what the government won't allow, of course. I hope that will change, because I don't think children and adults should be deprived of the knowledge and information that could help them make their decisions. Getting back to my main point, people believe in God and their religion largely because they're brought up in that religion. They attend schools in that religion and are only taught about that religion. That religion is embedded in a social group, in the way people behave and live in that group. And escape from that religion, moving away from it, can be very difficult in families, communities and states, because rejecting a religion can be seen as rejecting a community, family and much more. Of course, there should be no such thing. As I say, the reality is that children born into Buddhist societies in Buddhist countries are likely to end up as Buddhists. In the UK, people end up claiming to be Christians, a lot of them. Even though many people don't believe in God, still they would say give allegiance to the Church of England. We have a flag with a cross on it, of course, or England does. I was going to mention Minocchio. A few hundred years ago, Spanish Inquisition. He was tried and executed. He said, I was born a Christian, I want to remain a Christian. Now, if I had been born a Turk, I would want to live like a Turk. I do believe that every person considers his faith to be right, and we do not know which is the right. He was executed by the Spanish Inquisition in 1599. My children attend a Catholic school. I'm not a Catholic, as you can see. You walk in the door and there's a statue of Jesus. The school holds Catholic masses. In religious education and other classes, prayers are said in assemblies. My children have been told by one teacher to look at their cross and not take their eyes off it. Christian prayers are said. At home, Catholic children may have icons around. In fact, my brother is married to a Catholic wife, and I was somewhat shocked to find Catholic icons around the children's rooms. I thought, hold on, this is a bit young. Couldn't we wait a few years and let them make their own minds up? Maybe I must be naive. I think I am. I'm not sure of your experience in Islam, but I would think it's very likely you're taught from an early age that there's a God. And it's taught to you as fact. This is what's put to my children. It's not a, there could be, there couldn't be. It's, God says this. If you do this, God will do that. Not questioning. And this comes from a very early age, before children can make independent judgments. But Islam's a very big part of people's lives. You pray 5 times a day, maybe. There's language like, God willing, Alhamdulillah, if I can recall. Just as everyone in England will say, oh my God, or let's pontificate, named after the Pope, the Pontiff, to think about things. So religion is deeply there in our culture and our everyday. Why does this continue? Whom does the idea of God serve? I would say a large part of religion is a way of controlling people, keeping people under control. I've already mentioned Islam's meaning of submission, but Christians are encouraged to obey and follow. Do as it says in the book. Follow Jesus. Obey the commandments. Don't question. Don't think about whether they might be wrong. Obey. Oh, and yes, don't question whether the text is right or wrong, important or unimportant. You can interpret, but don't go beyond. Follow, obey, kneel before the king, because Jesus or God is described as the king. God is the king, Jesus the prince. And who does it suit to get people to obey and follow, rather than question? Kings, queens, the powerful, the wealthy. On more than one occasion I've met people from our privileged elite, public school boys. They often don't believe in gods themselves, but they think God is a damn good thing for other people. He gets other people to behave. It's a useful tool for them. Of course, the public school churches are full of people who pray. And then they go off to the city and make their millions and help our banks go bankrupt. And they accumulate their fortunes for themselves. And of course they go to their services in the city of London, where they say their prayers and do their church things. In ancient history, pharaohs, kings, they were gods in human dress. The ancient Assyrian king, well, I have a quote here, but you know that. Japanese god kings. God was a tool. God was used as a tool by powerful kings and emperors and religious officials to hold power, maintain power, deny democratic power. Christian conference at Nicaea, the first one in about 400 and something, what should I call it? ACE? I don't know. It was overseen by the Roman Emperor, Constantine, who saw Christianity as a way to control and strengthen his own imperial position. People put a number of arguments for believing in God, but there's no evidence, as I see it, for believing in God. There's no evidence in our lives for any supernatural being intervening in our day-to-day existence. Around 50% of people in this country, according to a religious trend document in 1999, don't believe in evidence. Why believe in something that you can't see, feel, hear? Something which does nothing for anyone, and for which there's no evidence of any acceptable kind. There are no gods, and I say to you that living life without God, without belief in supernatural forces, is a great way to live your life. There's no psychological burden of wondering what a non-existent God thinks of what you do, and wondering whether you will go to a heaven or a hell. Instead, you get on with your life. Hell, heaven, these places don't exist. When we die, we're buried in the ground, and that is that. We live on through the echoes of the things we did in our lives, through our children, through the good deeds and the bad, maybe, that we've done. And that is all. And that is how we live. And after we die, that is good. There are no rewards in any heaven. There are no rewards for being poor and humble in your life. As Christianity would promote poverty, or certainly sees it as a good thing in many ways. But who does that suit? The rich, the powerful, the wealthy. There's no punishment for any wrong that might be done now after you live. We have one life, we're living it now, it's to be enjoyed now, it's to be used now, because that is all there is. I submit to you that there are no gods, and that our society, people as individuals, would be happier and actually better off with no belief in gods, but acting on the basis of reason, evidence, recognizing our common humanity, and working for love, freedom, and peace. Thank you.
Right, so you've now heard both arguments from both speakers. Each speaker will now be given 8 minutes each for a rebuttal to counter the argument of their colleague. So Hamza and Ms. George would like to come up first.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you, Philip Nathan, for that very interesting sermon. Basically, I'd like to add this. A lot of what Philip Nathan has said has just been statements. We have to be very careful. It's called the Obama effect. A Obama has a beautiful smile, mashallah, very handsome, dark man, tall. He has his look, he has his eloquence. However, some of the things he says are just statements. Change is going to happen. Change we're going to believe in. Okay, and a rational human being who thinks, the Quran tells us to think, would say, fine, what has he just said? Just a statement. But how are we going to get change? How are we going to change the world? He's not saying much. He's just creating emotion in the masses. I think that's what Philip Nathan has done. For example, he says, there is no God, there's no evidence, there is no hell, there is no heaven. He hasn't substantiated any of his claims with a philosophical premise, scientific, rational, or whatever the case may be. So when we make statements in a debate, we must bring them back with evidence. As the Arabs say, Aina dalil? Where is your dalil? Where is your evidence? So just to come and sermonize, and I'm not saying this in a patronizing way, I'm just saying it more of a way to improve your next debate, which is, we shouldn't sermonize with the people. This is not khutbah, we're not going to be a khatib, we're going to have an intellectual discussion. When we make a statement, provide some evidence. Similarly, I thought I brought a very positive or cogent case for the existence of God. And you didn't address any of these issues. Does that mean you believe in what I said to be true? Therefore God exists? Let me just quickly go through some of his points. First point is the one that really gets up my nose. Yeah? Humanism is living a good life without God, and humanists are very happy and they do charitable work. Well, according to rational academic evidence, if you go into the sociological evidence of what's been happening in the past 20 years, you would see that people who do not believe in a religion are less happy, less healthier, and die younger. Did you know this? So humanism is the religion of irreligion, and it has failed human beings. For example, in 2001, Schnittke, in the Journal of Scientific Study and Religion, examined a data set of nearly 3,000 adults from the general population. And he found religious involvement had no significant relationship with depression. So you're more depressed if you're not religious. He also found that religiousness was a buffer, was a protection against mental distress. And adults who were religious showed signs of less worry and fewer symptoms of depression. For example, in 2002, Smith, McCullough, and Poll, in the Journal of a Meta-Analytic Review of Religiousness Depression Association, Evidence for Main Effects and Stress Buffering Effects, carried out an analysis of over 200 social studies and found that high religiousness, being more religious, predicts a lower risk of depression, lower drug abuse, and fewer suicide attempts, in contrast to the humanist tradition. We have so much evidence here, even to do with charity, altruism. Thank you. Altruism, giving charity. Humanists don't have a monopoly on giving charity. According to the rational academic evidence, not just hearsay and statements, religious people give more in charity than non-religious. For example, in 2000, political scientist and Professor Robert Putnam surveyed 200 volunteer organizations, and it showed there was a positive correlation between religiosity and membership of organizations. And there's so much evidence in the sociology of religion. If we see in the current academic research since the 1990s and onwards, we see that being religious, more happy, you die later, you're more healthier, less mental stress and worry. So I would argue that humanism has a very bad case for humanity. The second point that he made was that reason is the basis for humanism, but look what he said today was just statements without any reason behind those statements. Secondly, he was saying that one of the biggest arguments is the problem of evil. If a good God exists and evil exists, therefore a good God can't exist. But there's an assumption here. The assumption is that God doesn't have good enough reasons to allow evil. That's the assumption. God does not have good enough reasons to allow evil. But he does. If we can prove that God has good enough reasons to allow evil, then the argument fails. And I would argue, what are your definitions of good and evil? We just discussed you need God to have good and evil as an objective meaning. Without God, it's just subjective. So what do you mean by good and evil? Secondly, we believe that happiness is not the primary objective. That is the assumption amongst the humanists. For us, the worship of God is the primary objective. And goodness is one of the results of that. So it's not preventing evil is the most primary objective. Secondly, we know God created us for a test. That's one of our objectives, one of our maqsad, the maqasid, the objective of Islamic law, to create us for a test for eternal happiness. Secondly, having hardship allows us to understand who God is. So when God says He's the healer, we know God because He heals us if we are ill. Ill may be perceived as suffering, but by having suffering we understand God, which is greater to us than the perception of good. Secondly, suffering allows second order good. For example, first order evil is pain and suffering. First order good is pleasure. But second order good, a higher good, such as being courageous, you require someone to be a coward for the contrast. So to have greater good, you need evil. And there's so many other aspects to prove that God has good enough reasons to permit evil. But I would argue emotionally, what would you rather have? An atheist view where there is evil and suffering and at the end there is no justice and there's no eternal bliss? Or a godly view where there's even suffering for your test to come closer to God and you would get an endless reward? And the people of paradise, what do they say? They say as if the pain in dunya was nothing, the pain in the world was nothing, and we have eternal bliss. So what do you want, the dark world of atheism or the positive world of theism, someone who believes in a God and a religion? And you talk about the tsunami. According to the humanist view, those who drowned in the tsunami are just dead and they suffered. According to the Muslims, those who drowned in a Sahih Hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are martyrs. They are with their Lord and they're having eternal bliss. This is such a positive case for religion, whereas the atheist humanist view is very dark. And also the other question, which is that you need evidence, physical evidence for everything. No, you don't. Prove to me, Philip Nathan, that your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was alive, or she exists. You can't do that physically. You don't know where her grave is. You can't get any DNA samples. The only way to prove that she did exist is because you are here today. It's a rational concept, not naturalism. Everything requires physical evidence. So that premise is also flawed. Secondly, about the Greek Orthodox Church, I'm actually Greek, by the way. I look Pakistani, but I have Greek DNA somewhere. I look Patana, tic-tac. The point is, I'm actually Greek. I converted to Islam, alhamdulillah, 7 years ago. And the Greek Orthodox Church is a bit false. Actually, there's about 1 million Muslims there who are allowed to practice the religion. They're not assumed to be Greek, therefore Christian. There's actually Greek Muslims there. But I converted to Islam anyway. And then you claim about submission. I know I've got 1 minute left. Submission. Submission is a bad thing. But everyone submits to something, everyone has a reference point. It's either yourself, your ego, philosophers, other books, other people, your experience, or God. Now what is more rational? To refer yourself to something that is higher than you, greater than you, more experience, more knowledge, more understanding, more wisdom, or to refer to yourself something which is creation? The most logical thing is to submit yourself to the Creator because it's much better.
That's the last point.
Last point. And just to conclude, he has to address my arguments, which he hasn't in any shape or form. Please, Philip Nathan, address my arguments so we can have a fruitful discussion. Jazakallahu khairan.
So that was the rebuttal for Hamza. Now it's 8 minutes for Philip Nathan to respond to that. I'll take this back.
Well, thank you, Hamza. I don't know where to start. Well, I know where to start. Did any of the research that you quoted mention humanism?
Yes.
Well, humanism specifically, because I don't think this kind of research has compared humanism with other religions. It's compared people who have no religion. Humanism is a positive and constructive philosophy of life. I think if I did a survey of our humanist members, you'd find that we live, well, I think our president died a little while ago in his 90s, that our current chair is 84 years old. We have a lot of quite elderly people in our membership, actually. If you went there, you'd probably think I was one of the young ones. But I don't think that these kind of things are actually sort of reasons to believe anything. So you do live longer. You can take certain drugs that will have statins. In fact, I did do a radio show where the Christian priest was saying, well, Christians live longer, you see, so maybe everybody should be a Christian. That was his argument. I would say that the research probably shows that if you're in a social supportive group, you have friends who will help you out, you have a strong sense of belonging and many other things like that, then that's probably going to help you live a little bit longer. And I think looking at the research would show that. I can't go into individual papers. Yes, you've mentioned, you've presented a lot of points. I don't feel I'm a philosopher. I suppose I've been a scientist by training. And I, in fact, when it comes to philosophy, I often don't understand, unfortunately. And there's many things that I don't understand in life. And for example, diagrams like this, frankly, I just don't get it. I don't see what it means, what it's about. What I see is that there's not these things. I see no God in my life. I see no God doing anything. And, for me, that's where it's at. And, if you want a deep intellectual argument, I suppose you made a very good point about providing evidence, but I think it's for people who believe in God to provide evidence, because I see none. It's not there. There's no one. I can't see anything. I can't touch. I can't feel. I can't see anything. And he says humanism is a dark world. No, humanists don't want the children in Sri Lanka. We don't see that as suffering at all. It is suffering, but we don't want to see that as a test. We just don't want to see it happen. We don't want to see people lined up and shot. And our objective in the bright humanist world is to act to stop these things happening. To act through technology, to make vaccines, to act in various ways using technology to stop people starving, to have a better world philosophy so poor people who we could feed, that we actually do damn well feed them. And so I see, what we offer as humanists as being very positive and very bright. And I think Muslims can adopt those thoughts as well. And I don't see your world as being particularly dark. And I'm not very happy about that contrast between some kind of brightness and darkness, because, you can live a bright and happy and helpful life and believe in God, as far as I'm concerned. We have a difference of opinion maybe on that one, but, you can do so many good things. And I don't, but humanists do good things too. I think the research into charitable donations and such is a bit of a red herring. As a local humanist organisation, we do charitable works, we do good works, and that's what we feel that we do. God makes sense of the origins of the universe. That was a complicated argument, but I don't think in any sense that it does. If there is a God, what created the God? That's about as far as I can go in terms of the cause argument. Maybe the world is infinite, maybe it's not. I don't really know. Let's try and find out through research and investigating what happened and trying to understand better. I don't think God makes sense of the fine-tuning of life. This is the intelligent design argument, as far as I can see. I think we came here, we developed through a process of evolution. As Hamza rightly points out, the possibility of us being all here in this kind of way today at this point, there is astronomical low chance perhaps of that happening. But there's a 100% chance of something happening. This happens to be the one that happened. Okay? That's getting philosophical. Something had to happen, and us being here today is one thing that has happened. It's an outcome. There's going to be some outcome. Every outcome is probably small, and, but there's going to be an outcome, and today's outcome, here we are. This is it. God makes sense of objective moral values. I suppose listening to him, I felt, rape is wrong, massacres are wrong, they're absolutely wrong. I don't care whether you can rationalise it objectively or subjectively. They're just bloody well wrong, okay? And maybe I'm supposed to get philosophical about it, but they're just wrong, okay? And that's it. Humans, we are moral. We live in moral societies. I think someone told me about some society in Africa where they didn't have morals. It doesn't exist, you see, because we have to live together. We have to work together, live together, love each other. We are a community, and that's that.
Do you believe in abortion?
Well, that's not...
The choice.
That's not a relevant question at the moment, okay?
That's very relevant.
No, we can get on...
Sorry.
Okay. I was wondering if modern Islam is the same as historic Islam. Do people practice Islam in the same way as they did 1,000 years ago? Because in Christian societies, Christians were burning other people at the stake 300 years ago. But they don't do it now, and they claim that, this is a nice modern moral society and it's a Christian society. And I say we defeated Christianity. Good people, good moral values actually managed to get rid of that kind of rigid theology that used to sacrifice people in that kind of way. And I would suggest, I don't know, but I would reckon that maybe Islam and its interpretations has changed over the years. All right, you're shaking your head. Maybe that's not the case. Well, I can tell you that Christianity and its interpretation has changed over the years. And what has changed? Well, when I argue, the book is still the same. something's changing. People are changing. We change through history. We get different values, different perceptions, different experiences, and reinterpret things. There's a lot of morality without religion. Me and Obama, we're great friends. I didn't say anything about change. As I say, I'm not an intellectual philosopher. People are more depressed. I don't know, perhaps I've dealt with that point. Maybe some people are a bit depressed without our religion, but as I said, I put that down to being membership of social groups. You know, I don't think there meet that many depressed humanists. And yeah, I don't see these things as, again, these difficult events that happen in our life, or deaths of family, or children, or horrendous things like that. That's a hell of a test. It's not a test at all. It's a tragedy. I know some people at the moment, well, I was going to say, you know, a friend of a colleague, you know, her brother was dying from cancer, had to have his jaw taken out, had to have so many bad things happen to him. He was in constant pain and wanted to die, horrendous suffering. In fact, you know, and I don't see that as, it's not involving a test, it's just horrendous and tragic. We need to work to stop that happening. In a humanist world, there is certainly justice. We feel passionately about justice. Why do so many people I know who are humanists work for Amnesty International? Okay. I'd say the humanist view is right. It's much better to look at evidence, reason, to use experience and so forth, than referring to a God, which I say doesn't exist. Thank you.
Alright, so you've now heard from both speakers. We're going to have a short 5-minute, maximum 7-minute break before moving to question and answer session. This is where you get the chance to contribute to the debate as well. Before I'll go into the question and answer session now. I'm going to give you the rules, and everyone has to stick to the rules. I know some people here are my friends or whatever. I don't care if you're my friend or whatever. Everyone sticks to the same rules, inshallah, okay? If you want to ask a question, please make sure it's a question. There's always somebody, no matter what event I do, no offence, who thinks that people came to listen to him and not the speakers. So ask a question, don't give a lecture, please, okay? You have like a few seconds, make your point, and then that's it. I don't want anyone standing up and giving a lecture. If you do, I'll politely ask you to stop. You can either ask a question by writing down on a piece of paper. You have to write down in English. Somebody asked me, can I write in Arabic? I'm sorry, but you can't. Make sure that it's readable handwriting. Or, if you want, you can ask a direction by raising your hand. What we'll do is we'll first see if the ladies have a question. After that, we'll see if the gentlemen have a question. And after that, we'll answer a question from the piece of paper. All speakers have an option to comment on the question. So, even if you're asking a direct question to Hamza, for example, after Hamza gives the answer, Philip will be allowed to comment on it. Okay? We will allow a little bit of going back and forth, but after a couple of minutes, I'll have to stop it in order to move on. I want as many people as possible to get the opportunity to ask a question. Okay, so just give it a couple of more minutes. Has everyone got a piece of paper that wants one? Right, so might as well get started with the Q&A, because we've got about half an hour left. Okay, so we'll first start off. Is there any sister that would like to ask a question direct about a piece of paper? Raise your hand. I've got one. Yeah, can you just please make sure you stand up so we can hear the question clearly? Or at least raise your voices.
Can I just raise my voice?
Yeah, you can.
Can you hear me there?
Sort of. I think it's the same.
When you said that the tsunami could have been prevented, how is that possible? And if it is possible, why wasn't it prevented?
There was technology available, there is technology available that monitors, as I understand it, wave flows, changes in movements of the ocean floor. It was available, and if the money had been invested in it, I believe it was even discussed before, by if the governments around the Indian Ocean had acted together. But as I understand it, they didn't act together. It was very expensive, so they didn't want to invest in it because would have costed a lot. But obviously the cost of 225,000 people dying, is enormous as well.
So that means they chose money over the people?
I presume that they were making a calculation that these kind of events weren't likely to happen. I'm not inside their minds, but they, in a sense, yeah. But that's always, that is the case. The government's decided not to spend on it, as I understand it. Okay, but I believe the technology does exist. I believe the technology is already deployed in some oceans in the world. But the poorer countries are in bad regions of the world, or some are, and they didn't want to spend the money on it. That's my understanding. Okay.
Okay, Hamza, is there anything you'd like to say on that?
No, it's just a very simple argument, really, that the humanist persuasion, they will always be chasing around trying to stop suffering. When suffering is inevitability, we're going to die, we're going to be sick. So this is a standard. Suffering is as inevitable as taxes. We're going to get taxed all the time, we're going to suffer all the time. That's life. Now religion, Islam has come to deal with these problems in a very positive way. It elevates the psychology and the mentality of the human being to the way that everything they see is positive. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith, ajban, which you could have other words like ajib, amazing is the state of the believer. Amazing. Because when something's bad happened to him, he's patient. And patience is good for him because of the akhirah. In the hereafter, he will get paradise. If something good happens to him, the believer, he says Alhamdulillah. He thanks Allah, he thanks God. And that is also good for him too. For the dunya, the earthly time, and the akhirah. So look what religion does. It provides a positive perspective on suffering. Humanism doesn't provide that positive perspective. He's always chasing around to stop suffering, trying to beat God. Let's beat God. But that can't happen. Fine, I do believe we should put things in place to prevent harm. For example, in the Islamic State, in history, the Uthmani Khilafah, they sent food to the Irish people in the potato famine. Do you know this? When the British couldn't do it, because they couldn't afford it or they had problems with the Irish, whatever the case may be. But the Ottomans secretly gave food to the Irish. So they provide these things. For example, in Islamic history, we developed scientists like Ibn Sina. He created a book, developed a book called The Canon of Medicine, which was used in Western Europe for over 600 years. So Islam doesn't say don't deal with problems. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, every cure has a disease, so seek the cure. So we have this very positive view on life, very exciting, dynamic, lovely view. So this is what religion does to us, which I think is opposed to the very bleak vision of chasing after problems like the humanist tradition. Jazakallahu khair.
You've got about a few seconds to say something.
Well, I don't believe suffering is good. Intense suffering, you're right. I would chase after suffering, trying to reduce it, trying to stop it. Inevitably, we will suffer some kind of pain in our lives. Bad things have happened to me. Bad things will happen to all of us at some point in time. I get on with life. You get ill, you get better, you get on with it. Bad things happen, you get on with it. And I don't. And that's just what I do. You could say maybe some, very bad things have perhaps happened to myself, but I don't think not having a religion had any effect on me. I sort of thought, well, I see, death is inevitable. It's going to come. And it can be quick, but it can be long. I suppose I remember a story to do with Mother Teresa of Calcutta, who was a famous Catholic missionary, and a man was in the last throes of his life, and he was suffering terribly. You haven't been there, I haven't been there. With terrible cancers all over his body, in intense pain. And Mother Teresa was there, and she said, he said, give me some pain relief. And she said, no. Jesus is kissing you at the moment. His suffering is good. And the man said, well, please tell him to stop kissing me. And I think there's intense pain and suffering, and I want it to stop. And so you're right. Yes, we will go around chasing suffering, trying, as you say, maybe suffering, we're going to have bad things happen in our lives, but we need to try and do something about it. We need to prevent children from starving. We need to, look after environment.
We'll have to move on from that point. Yes, brother.
What about the suffering if it's happened in all if the suffering happen, or like tsunami that happen, in order to save the other people. For instance, if Hitler was killed when he was a child in catastrophe, that will save people, will save 6 million Jewish people would be killed. So sometimes God permit, I think, God permit suffer happen in order to save the other people. Sometimes. What do you think about it?
Well, I don't think there's a God.
But
That's an assumption in your question. I don't think there's a God. I think that happened, and it would have been better if it hadn't happened. And humanists would like to chase around and stop Adolf Hitler's, stop the BNP, stop these extraordinarily unpleasant people, and we will chase them.
No, I disagree with that. Humanists don't go around solving problems because the mentality of the humanist, if you don't believe in a God, you're not going to see those problems as opportunities. That's what religion does. It allows you to see a problem as an opportunity. Whereas for the humanists, they are depressed and they're sinking in depression because there's been a problem, because they don't have a God to teach them how to view things positive. No, this is true. So this claim of having a monopoly of treating things well, it's not true. Because if we're looking okay, let's look at reality. When Islam was in political power in history, it did some things that was unparalleled from a humanist perspective. Read the historical books, Philip Mansell, his historical book, Constantinople. The only time in history where a state had food, shelter and clothing for everybody. This is not a humanist phenomenon. This is an Islamic phenomenon based on Islamic economic principles that elevate people and gave them economic liberation. Because when they give the zakah, the 2.5% tax for the charity, the people came back and gave it back to the leader and said, everyone has food, shelter and clothing. So when you look at religion, it sees problems and it creates opportunities from them. Because as I said, we do try to chase suffering to solve the problem because we see it in a positive way. Because when we say this, there's suffering, that person's suffering, fine. I'm going to try and deal with the problem because, one, I get a reward for it as well. It's a means to come closer to God because I'm dealing with the problem. And there's something positive about this. We believe God is all-wise. And from His wisdom, you can't say just because I can't see the wisdom, it's not there. That's actually a logical fallacy. It's an argument of ignorance. You can't argue from ignorance. It's a logical fallacy in logic. I'm sure you're aware of that. So, if we believe God is all-wise, then His wisdom permeates everything. And sure, maybe something happened today because there's infinite wisdom that we can't yet understand. But because we can establish God does really exist, as I said in the beginning, you can't have an infinite set of past events which you still didn't address. This kind of thing, we can argue. We have a very positive view, and it's an amazing view, in my opinion.
I've never claimed that humanists have any monopoly on positive moral values, and I think you've heard me say it again and again. You as Muslims will do many good and many positive things in your life. Why should we have a monopoly? Christians do many, many good things. There's no humanist monopoly on being good, and I've never said such a thing. I suppose at the moment in this society, which is secular or Christian, there aren't many people starving on the streets. And you brought up that example of an Islamic society doing that. Are we then to take that a Christian or a secular society, that one should believe in the values of a Christian and secular society because
that's wrong?
Because of the current situation.
There's 90,000 homeless people in England.
Well,
including women and children. 90,000 and growing.
And they got money.
I think if you go back to the situation you described, it's unlikely that, by definitions of modern definitions.
No, but you're just saying it's not true. I mean, there's 90,000 people, hungry on the streets.
Well,
homeless people.
Well, I don't see, people that they're classified as homeless, but there are places for them.
Oh, now we're nitpicking. Now we're going into the nitty-gritties of things. I mean, you said there is no one homeless and starving, but there is.
Well, it depends.
In America, the richest capitalist state in the world, 25% of America is living under the poverty ladder. I mean, this is capitalism. I mean, so the things you're saying are not really true.
Well,
you can't just pick things from thin air and have an argument. To be substantiated, isn't it? I'm not saying that to belittle you. I'm just saying, if you want to have positive discourse, positive discussion, and then substantiate our claims with things that we've read about. If you don't know, just say you don't know. Well, don't say no, there isn't no homeless, but there is.
I think
go to the Home Office website. Go to Amnesty International.
I think if you look on the streets of Middlesbrough tonight, I think you're going to find an absence of starving children, starving adults. There may be one or two homeless people, some people on drugs with alcohol problems, etc., etc. I think that's the fact.
Alcohol problems.
All right, a number of them. All right, a number of them with alcohol problems. Okay. I don't think that undermines basically what I'm saying. I mean, there are people in countries where Islam is Islamic law, where people, there are people who drink alcohol. They're not counted in statistics. I have lived in a country where Islam was the religion, and if I went out, drove through the desert, you would see bottles of
We are going to have to move on. I know people have got their hands up, but
Sorry about that.
so we spent 15 minutes on 2 questions and we've got 15 minutes left. So we need to move on and just keep moving on. We agreed we'd go sisters, brothers, then paper. So I'm sorry about that.
And the numbers are. Okay, the question is, why do humanist people take out various insurance cover? Belief in a God Almighty, the eternal life of the death, is a kind of insurance policy, and that is better to have rather than not. I'm sure you can answer that easily. I thought the question is not that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. This is one life we've got. I may die, and I would like my family to have some, money, some protection after I kick the bucket. I don't think there's anything after we die, and and if I didn't, they'd end up being poor. It's human action, you see. Okay. To try and solve problems.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right,
Next question.
Sisters, anyone got a question from the sisters? Oh, they're really convinced by what you guys said. Brothers, have you got a question? Now we'll go on.
My question is, I've got a question, but I wanted to just go back 1 second. One second, just about what they were saying before. It seems like we've been going around in circles concerning human suffering. Muslims, it's our duty, religious duty, to alleviate suffering. It's not just humans, but Muslims. Our point is that even the animal, if it's suffering, we try and remove the suffering from the animal. So it is a maqsad shari, it's a principle of Sharia to remove suffering. My question is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you are in doubt as to what we've revealed to our slave, then produce one surah like the Quran and invite all of your helpers and your aiders if you are true about what you say.
Besides
so the
Allah,
point, the point is, Philip Nathan said that these books, the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, they are written by men. Now I have nothing to do with the Bible and the Torah. Those books have been changed, and yes, men have changed them. But my point is about the Quran. If he's saying that the Quran is a book which has been written by men, then bring all of the men in the world together today and bring the like of this Quran. They tried in the past and they couldn't bring anything. Philip Nathan and all of Richard Dawkins and all of the people who don't believe in Islam, let them bring one surah, not the Quran, one surah like the Quran. And let's prove Islam to be wrong, if that's the case.
I know for a fact. You got to pop a lot.
It was actually a question.
Prove something wrong. But yes, the Quran, of course, it was written by people. What is the point? That I have to somehow prove it's wrong? I think we need to sort of prove that the content is right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to show some kind of assertion that is actually correct, that the content is correct. This is debate is about whether there is a God, there is no God.
You said it's written by men, so I'm saying prove it's written
Okay,
by men.
Well, historically, I'm sure that if people looked at it historically, I'm not sure of the research on the particular question, but it's well known. People have looked at the text of, for example, the Christian Bible, and have shown
That's different, though.
This is the problem, you see. This is why people get frustrated, is because you're taking a specific instance in Christian history and you're superimposing it on the Islamic narrative. It's a logical fallacy to take something specific and make it general. I mean, if you're going to claim something about the Quran and you have no evidence for it, why claim that? I would never sit here claiming things about
what
God.
is the gentleman claiming? Is he claiming that it was written by God?
Let me make
No.
My point is,
It's written by men. Right.
but how?
No.
How substantiate that claim then? Do you see my
Guys,
point?
just let us speak.
Every time when someone has a premise, you say a statement, and then you give some evidence for it. So, for example, when I was talking about cosmology, the origin of the universe, you can't have infinite set of past events, you can't go infinite regress, it's an absurdity, therefore there's a sole cause. You said, then what caused that cause? Then I argued even in my presentation, but then you could go infinitely again, what caused the cause, what caused the cause, what caused the cause. You never have today anyway. So rationalist states, you must have a sole cause, that's uncaused. Now, see, that's a substantiation of the claim. You said book that was created by human beings. Just a statement. And you just said again, there is no God, full stop. But with no evidence. That's the problem that people get usually frustrated. Is because you're just saying a statement. However, to demystify the Sheikh's comment when he
I'll
said,
and say that this is to do with assumptions, and all logical arguments, if you're going to get into what logical philosophy is about, there are assumptions within arguments, and the assumption, your argument is based on a premise that there is a God.
No,
There
it wasn't.
Your premise
saying-
is wrong.
No,
Your
no.
premise is absolutely
What
wrong.
he's saying is
and
this.
therefore everything that flows from that premise must also be.
okay, let me demystify that for you then, yeah? The
So
Quran says,
you aren't teaching me things, you aren't demystifying anything.
I'm doing it now for you.
You're putting your point of view in a debate.
No, I'm
You are-
demystifying.
I'm sorry, you are not my teacher.
okay, well, I'm sorry that you feel offended. The point is this.
No, I'm just
the
pointing out
Quran
that you're not
says,
teaching me today.
This
You're
is,
putting
in
your
all
point of
respect,
view in a debate.
okay, I think it's good to learn from each other. I've learned a lot from you, and I'm assuming that you learn a lot from me. The Prophet ﷺ said, the cure to ignorance is to ask and learn. You're asking, I'm learning, you're asking. And this is the thing about positive discourse. It's not about egos. I don't care if you're going to teach me. I'd rather gain something positive from you. I'll pray to Allah that happens. And the point is this. The Shaykh is saying in the second chapter of the Quran, verse 23, it says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Talking to the whole of humanity, humanists, non-humanists, religious, non-religious. If you're in doubt about the book which we have sent down to the Prophet, the servant, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then bring a chapter like it. And and bring what your helpers and supporters besides God if you are truthful. So he's saying, if you don't believe it's from God, then I'm challenging humanity, saying, bring the smallest chapter like it. Now, according to the classical, the Mufassirun, those who explain the Quran, such as Ibn Kathir, Jalalain, Qurtubi, and many other scholars, even Western scholars such as Arbery, Margaluth, Bruce Lawrence, and many others, they came to a consensus, Western and Eastern scholarship, that this challenge has something to do with this unique nature of the Quranic language. The language is inimitable, is unmatched, is unique. So what they do is then they take this universal statement based upon Western and Eastern scholarship, Muslim and non-Muslim, and they derive conclusions. The Muslim is a rational being, he derives conclusions. Can it be from an Arab? No, because he challenged the best Arabs who were Arab linguists par excellence. For example, Ibn Rashid, a famous historian at that time, said, they loved the language of Arabic and could express themselves in the best way. Similarly, we have Western academics like Bruce Lawrence that says Quranic verses are signs of inexhaustible truth. They signify meaning laid with meaning, light upon light, miracle after miracle. Martin Zame, another Dutch Orientalist, says that Quranic Arabic is a written manifestation, eminent written manifestation, not found anywhere. Arbery, he said the Quran is amazing. You had Reverend Boswell Smith saying the Quran is a wisdom of truth, the purity of style, and it's a miracle, and indeed a miracle it is. Margaret, you have all these Western Orientalists, best place to look at the Quran saying there's something unique here.
And
So
some
the
people will
Muslim,
say that about the Christian
I agree,
Bible as well.
no, they never do that, by the way.
Well, right.
Substantially. Substantially, okay. Now, some people may argue Shakespeare, in other words, Sheikh Zabur. No, you're kidding. Shakespeare, they say he was very unique. But there's a difference between the uniqueness of Shakespeare and other masterpieces and the Quranic uniqueness. Quranic uniqueness is about the structural features of the language. Shakespeare is about the subjective, how it sounds nice. Now the Quran with the structural features...
Well, I'm sorry,
let me
if I could
finish.
get a word... No, because it's taken rather a long time.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, demystify things.
Well, I'm not being demystified. Isn't it interesting that yourself, born as you converted to Islam, but many people think you're singing the praises of your Quran, your Islamic book.
No, I'm
and
not.
Christians
No, I'm
will
not.
sing the praises and talk about the uniqueness of the Bible.
No, I'm not.
My wife is a Christian and is not a born-again Christian. And she will go on about this special book, this special New Testament, which is a great guide in
But
people's
you don't let me
lives.
finish.
Well, because we've got to finish at 8:30.
You can't just butt in and just destroy me like that.
Well, because I think we need to take turns. Okay?
Yeah, but sure, but the
but
point
my
I'm
wife
trying
is
to
a
make
Christian, and she's a committed Christian, born-again Christian. She will say, you've got to be baptized, the New Testament provides great guidance.
I'm giving you academic evidence. I'm not just giving you my subjective
It
whims and
really
desires.
doesn't sound like academic evidence to me.
You have to go in. You
It
have to
sounds
go in.
selective.
Okay, just everyone, please. I'm in charge, so I can't say go in.
He's talking.
I'm the Don here, right? No one shout out from the crowd again, please. Right?
Bless him.
When I start putting the limit on how long each person can talk for, this gives every person an equal chance, and at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to get as many questions asked as possible, right? I did say after guys we'll go to here, so we'll go in here, and then we'll go back to guys. I'm going to start putting, you got 1 minute each to just comment on each question.
Now, could you please answer back the questions raised by Brother Hamza? That must be one of you.
Well, my name's Hamza, and this is
Okay.
your name as well. You have two Hamzas nowadays.
I think
Is he
the
taking his father?
questions I think I have addressed the questions raised by
How's he
Hamza.
out?
I'm here to argue
How's he
humanism
out?
about this debate in a manner which, you know, in a way which basically argues the case that I wish to put. And I'm not going to respond to the way I have responded to some of the issues, to the 3 points that Hamza raised in terms of his main arguments for the existence of the God already when we did that session a few minutes ago. So I believe I have already dealt with these points. Thank you.
I mean, very quickly, I would disagree. For example, you didn't answer the question, can we have a forever past? Is infinite regression a reality? Can we believe in astronomical figures of chance? Can something be created out of nothing? Can we have objective moral values? You believe that they are, but conceptually you just give an emotional argument saying, yes, they are, full stop, but that's not an argument. I gave so many questions based on a lot of a lengthy discussion, and yet you did not give any substantial argumentation for that, in my opinion.
Okay,
Just quickly, I think the hall will share if I say thank you to all of you to do this talk. I think we are trying to kind of get God Almighty, or to recognize God Almighty by the physical laws as we know of. But God Almighty is beyond the physical laws. He is unique. Just a small comment.
Okay.
Okay, so 1 minute each to comment on briefly.
Well, you mentioned physical laws, yes. Common senses, see, hear, see some kind of influence in our current life, etc. That would sort me out as evidence for there being a God. And beyond that, I can't see. Yeah, there's no, that is a justification. You know, if you say God is invisible, you can't perceive him, has no effect, you can't see or hear or touch, etc., etc. Well, for me, those are the things that I require in order to believe something. I do need my senses, I do need some sense of influence on the current world.
Do you see what's behind the wall?
Well, from experience, you know, in life, I know that there is a wall behind me.
And behind the wall?
Yes, yes, of course. We can carry on questioning further. Obviously, we base things on past experience, perceptions of history and so forth.
Just give Hamza a minute.
Yeah, interesting position here is that, you know, even if you claim you base things on experience, many people in this audience actually experience God at least 5 times a day. So what can you use that as a substantiation for the experience of God?
My life experience is Jesus.
Yeah, but that's different. There's a difference between God exists and what God is. Epistemological, ontological arguments are different. How to get to know God is a different story. Now, the uncle was saying God is unique. We believe God is unique, but we do believe God existing we can assess from natural laws. For example, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Have you not seen the camel and how we created it? From physical laws, physicality, we can derive that there is a sole cause for the universe. But to know what is God is different. You need revelation because it's above and beyond you. This is the entity that's created the whole universe. You can't assume it. You need revelation for that. And you need to substantiate that revelation is actually from God by proving it's a miracle. But to prove God does exist, you cannot use the physical laws and the universe that you see around you to come to those conclusions as I believe I did. But one of the flaws in the argument of the falsification theory, which was Antony Flou's flawed argument, was that, for example, you have the believer and disbeliever, they go into this room. And in this room, the believer says, oh, because there's a room, there must be someone who made the room. And the disbeliever says, no, you can't prove that because you can't see him. But that's a flawed analogy, because the believer doesn't come into this room and say there must be someone who made the room. The believer comes to the room and sees the arrangement of technicality, the things in the room, the lights, the books, a PhD thesis in the corner, then concludes that there must have been someone who put them there, because it's irrational to conclude the opposite. So the disbeliever concludes from a presumption of atheism, the dogma of presuming atheism to be true. But the believer, when he comes to this room, he's concluding from evidence. That's why your falsification theory is flawed.
Sorry. We've got, as you can see, it's almost past. We've got time for one final question.
Let this guy.
Leave while you ask us, sorry, I can't see them. Sorry. I'm going to ask somebody who hasn't asked a question.
Simple, quick one.
Okay. But just before I ask the question, if you volunteer to help on the stalls, because we're running out of time, when I ask you to leave, brothers, I want you to leave out that door that way. Sisters, you go down that way and leave outside that way. So if you volunteer to work on the stalls, David Assam, can you come here now to save time? And the sisters, can you go down to where that table is now, please? If if possible. Brothers sat on the edge, please move closer towards the end because the sister won't walk down there. Guys who are sat on the edge there where I'm pointing, please. You move closer in, please.
Now doesn't move.
Everyone, please.
What does everybody bang?
No.
What happened then?
So, sisters who volunteer to help, can you come down now, please, before everyone else starts to leave? Thanks. Just at the table there, please. Right, will ask a question.
Right. Question is, obviously, you're talking about relieving pain and, from the human people, yeah? And what would you say about euthanasia for the humanists? How do you stand against euthanasia and killing people when they're really ill?
Sadism as well.
What is this humanist stance on that?
Totally against killing people when they are really ill.
Even this euthanasia because they're severely ill, yeah? You don't see a spiritual solution there at all?
No, we don't believe in killing people when they're severely ill.
Right. Okay.
Totally against it. Sorry, over to you.
Isn't that contradictory? Because that means you're permitting suffering according to the principles.
Yeah.
So the humanist permits suffering.
Well, who is to judge what that suffering is? Who is to judge
Exactly.
that? I would say that
Only God can judge, right?
Yeah.
So there is no God. The person who is doing the suffering needs to make the judgment. That person who is suffering with terrible cancer.
Do you see the suffering? How do you know they're suffering? You feel it?
The fact that they are suffering.
Do you see this?
It's not for others to judge. We don't support that.
Okay,
That's a very
okay.
good question.
It's got
Show
more
the
than...
flaws and concepts.
Yeah, I know you've all got lots of questions. You might, I don't know if they decide to stay for a bit, you can come and try and talk to them.
Just talk about the Bible. He said there is lots of contradiction, scientific contradiction in the Bible. It's not like the Quran. Just to prove any scientific contradiction go against the Quran. There is not a single verse go against the established scientific facts in the Quran. There's not a single verse in the Quran go against any established or contradict with any established scientific facts. But in the Bible, it's with me. I bring thousands of contradictions. It's with me.
He doesn't believe in the Bible.
But yeah, but we see we are not. You don't believe in the
Yeah,
Bible, but in the Quran doesn't contradict any scientific fact.
Have you read the Quran?
Have you read the Quran?
Have you read the Quran?
Thank you.
Like the Big
One
Bang.
of the things that I said when I started off was that if someone is born in an Islamic society, they're very likely to end up as Muslim.
That's the
Somebody
logical
who's born
fallacy.
We're not an Islamic society
most
though.
likely to end up as Christian. People in Sri Lanka where I've lived, they're brought up as Buddhists or Tamils, and they're most likely to stay like that. And I would suggest that the reason that you are so assertive about this is because of your upbringing and so forth.
We're living in an atheist
It's
society.
like Big Bang in the Quran.
Let me give
My wife
my 2
claims
cents.
that the New Testament is some kind of perfect book.
Don't protest.
Guys,
You know, here
Just
they would be
I
arguing.
need to respond to this. To respond to this, basically, this is called the genetic fallacy. It's a logical fallacy. Just because people are brought up in something, and then therefore they did it because they were just brought up, not because of their ration. That's a logical fallacy. Go learn logic. It's called the genetic fallacy.
That's right.
And the point is, and also it's belittling to the questioner because you don't know the questioner. The questioner may have done analysis and reading and has justified claims to why he's a Muslim. For example, myself, I converted 7 years ago because of ration and reason. So you can't just take this outdated cliche and stereotype and say just because you're born into something, you're going to stay into it, and therefore it's not true. The point is, we don't live in an Islamic society. We live with a lot of atheist pressures. We go to university and we have atheist and secular persuasions attacking the mindset of the Muslims. And if you want to use that argument, if the Muslims still stay Muslim in this secular context, therefore Islam must be true, if you use your argument. You're actually belittling a lot of the audience by doing that. That's why you will never get a Muslim, I hope not so, and I hope I didn't do this, by just making a claim and not providing any substance. I think you've done a lot of the time today.
I'm sorry, but I found that the comments made were being entirely uncritical of the book, that it was not being criticised in any sense. The assumption is that it is perfect, and of course, if you have that assumption, you are going to read it as if it is. That is the assumption that was underlying.
You're putting words in his mouth. He was showing to you why he thinks it's perfect. If you think there's problems with it, and you claim there is, what are the problems? And now, if you don't find any, then why did you claim it in the first place? This is the problem by it's almost lying in debates. If you haven't read the Quran, why make claims about the Quran? I would never make claims about the Buddhist scriptures because I've never read them. For me to do so would be deceit. Now, if you did say that the Quran has been written by man, it's got problems, contradictions, etc., then the onus of proof is on you, not on him, because you made the claim.
And having experience of life and heard many people talk about their holy books in such a manner, my experience tells me that people from certain the Christians may talk born again Christians will talk in glorification terms about their own text.
That's not an argument.
Buddhists will talk in glorification terms about their own text.
Sure.
Part of academic things is to read critically. And I didn't feel that there was a critical edge to what you were saying.
Okay, everyone.
Sorry, Phil, can I give you a copy of the Quran? Will you read it?
It's very unlikely. I might read a chapter.
Okay, can I give you
My wife got me to read the book of Matthew once.
I show you.
Now guys, I just got one or two things I'd like to say. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming down. As Imam Ali I think it was when you said it, everyone's either your brother and sister in Islam or your brother and sister in humanity. I'd like to thank both speakers for coming down. I know, like I said at the beginning, due to the nature of the topic and due to it being like a debate, both people feel strongly about the same. If you have any opinions criticised, wherever, it can cause a bit of tension. So I'd like to ask Hamza and Philip if they agree to stand up and hug before we all do. We'll pray for them. And again, please, before you leave, right, brothers come out that way, sisters that way. Please do visit the stalls, take anything you want for free, and please don't forget to donate. We're desperate for your donations. We're not going to stay how desperate we are for your donations, please.